it's on. Whew, that was tricky, but we are live. Sorry for the delay. You know how it is, quarantine, everybody's using the Wi-Fi here, so it's busy. Welcome to another TCS Live. I'm here with Gleice today, and I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to let Gleice take the lead today, and I'll be checking your messages and your comments. If you have any questions, please send it to us. And I'll be back in a moment. I'll leave you with Gleice.
Hi everybody. So I'm Gleice, as you know. I teach here in Bremen in 4th grade, and I hope my students are here listening to me. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit how this is going to go. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my relationship with storytelling. I'm going to tell you a story that I've told my children a few times, and they know well. When I say my children, I mean my students in my classroom. And that story has a little bit of variation because I have worked on the story to suit my students. And then I am going to tell you a little bit of what you can do at home and how you can work with storytelling at home with your children. And then I'm going to be answering some questions. I hope you have some questions. And so my relationship with storytelling started a long time ago when I was a little girl. Like most stories, they start when I was a little girl. My parents worked in a sugarcane plantation, and they didn't know how to read well. So books were not around. So I don't remember ever seeing a book around home when I was growing up. But one thing that we did lots and lots was to tell stories to one another, especially when we had blackouts, which happened very often. So we would light a fire and we would tell stories around the fire. Mostly my grandfather was a storyteller, and he would very often tell scary stories, which was scary. But that's what we did. So all the stories were oral. Now you're probably wondering, well, how come no books? I'm not that old, right? It's not like it happened 100 years ago. I'm 35, 34. What? I just said my age in front of everybody. Can you cut? No, you can't cut.
It's live and Charlie's saying hi.
Oh, sorry. So never mind my age. You didn't hear that. So yeah, that was not a long time ago, but it was in a very remote village in Brazil. So this was how I grew up, like just listening to a story orally as they came. So now I'm gonna tell you a story. It's called The Bremen's Town Musician, and it's one of my favorite fairy tales. And it has animals in it. And the way I'm gonna do it is totally new. I've never done it. I've done it a few times with puppets. So I thought, well, you probably don't have puppets at home. So I'm gonna try to improvise a little bit. So I apologize in advance for the roughness of it because I did not practice. Because I thought it would be more real if I didn't. So we'll see how that goes. I also added a song to the story, which I'm gonna need my hands then. And if the children are out there, especially my children, because they know this so well, you can sing along and you can move along with me as well as the story goes. And Michael, you keep me check for the time. And am I speaking loud enough?
Yes, the audio is great.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm gonna tell a story, right? The Bremen's Town Musician. And it started like this. Once there was a donkey, and the donkey worked for his master for many years, carrying him uphill and downhill, everywhere his master wanted to go. But now the donkey was getting old and tired, and could no longer carry his master to town. So the rumor in the farm was that the donkey would be going far away. He would be good for nothing else. So afraid of what would happen to his life, the donkey decided to run away and be a musician in the town of Bremen. So off he went on the road. When he was not far along, he heard a cry. "Oh, oh, 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 oh!" "What cry is that, dog? What's the matter with you?" said the donkey. "Well, I'm a hunting dog, you see. And because my teeth are not so good anymore and I am old, I can no longer hunt, and I am good for nothing." The dog could not work anymore, and his master wanted to get rid of him. "Well," said the donkey, "you can come with me to the town of Bremen. We can become musicians together. Can you sing?" "Oh, yes, I can sing very well indeed." "Well, I guess we can see about that." So together they start singing. Trumpet, 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 ta, ta, loo, hee, hee, hee. Hello, hello, hee. Pa, lom, pa, pa, lom, pa, loo. "Well, your voice sounds wonderful," said the donkey. "Well, thank you. I think we're gonna be very rich." And off they went to the town of Bremen together. And as they were walking far and far, they heard another cry. "Meow, meow, meow." "What is that noise?" cried the donkey. "It's me, the cat. Why are you crying such a sad song?" "Well, I can no longer catch a mouse, and my mistress is very angry and wants to get rid of me." "Well, donkey, dog and I are going to the town of Bremen, and you can for sure come with us. Can you sing?" "Well, I can sing beautifully, and I would be so glad to join you." All right, you can join us." And together they practice. Trumpet, 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 ta, ta, loo, hee, hee, hee. Hello, hello, hee. Pa, lom, pa, lom, pa, pa, loo. And the three of them sat together to the town of Bremen. They were not gone for such a long time when they heard yet another sad cry. "Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo," cried the rooster from the top of the tree. "Well, what is the matter with you, rooster? Why singing such a sad song?" said the dog. "Well, I am no longer good for singing and waking up people in the farm. They want to put me in the pot and make a soup out of me. How dare they? I've worked for so many years and made sure everybody was always on time." "Well," said the dog, "we are going to the town of Bremen. The donkey, the cat, and I will be musicians in town and make lots of money. You can come with us if you want." "Well," said the rooster, "I'll gladly join you, for I have the most beautiful voice." "Well, we will see about that." And together they sang one more time. Trumpet, 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 trumpet.
Oompa loompa, oompa loompa, oompa loompa loo. And so off they went, the donkey, the dog, and the cat, and the rooster, all together to the town of Bremen. They walked for a long, long time until the night came. They were all hungry and tired. They realized they would not make it to the town of Bremen. So they decided to sleep. The donkey and the dog lay down by the roots of the trees. The cat and the rooster went all the way to the top. And before the rooster went to sleep, he looked around and he saw a light that was shining afar. And he woke up his friends and said, "Friends, I think there is a house nearby. We could go and check it out. There might be food to fill up our hungry bellies. And there might be a warm place for us to rest our tired bones." And so they all agreed, and they all went to the house. When they got there, Donkey decided, since he was the tallest, to go to the window and check what was happening there. When he looked through the window, he saw a table filled with the most delicious food, and robbers sitting on it and enjoying all that food. There was also money everywhere. So Donkey told his friends what he saw, and he had an idea. They would break into it and scare these robbers away. And so they piled themselves one on top of each other. Donkey was to stay on the bottom. The dog was to stay on top of the donkey. And the cat was to be placed on top of the dog. And finally, Rooster would sit on top of the cat. And so they got ready. They barged into the door and they sang their song from the top of their lungs. Trumpet, 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 ta, ta, loo. And guess what? The robbers were so scared and so frightened that they ran away as quick as their legs could carry them. And the rooster and the cat and the dog and the donkey ate all there was left. Everything. They filled up their bellies with all the yummy food. And so, because they were really tired, they all found a nice place to sleep. The rooster stayed on the roof. The cat sat by the fire. The dog sat just behind the door. And the donkey found a nice place by the straw outside the house. But you know what? The robbers were outside and they were like, "Who dare take our house?" So they sent somebody, one of them, to check who had taken their house. Well, the robber came in when all the lights were off. And as he walked in, he had a match and he wanted to light in the coal. Well, the coal was not really a coal. It was the eyes of the cat that was glowing in the dark. So as he got close to the cat was frightened and spat on him and scratched his eyes. And the man screamed and ran to the door where the dog bit his leg. And as he ran away, the donkey who was just outside the door gave him a big kick with his feet, the back of his feet. And then, as he was running away from the house, he heard the rooster saying, "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" And off the robber went to his friend and told them about witches and monsters and a judge that was up in the roof judging everything. And he said, "I will never, ever go back into that haunted house." Well,
The house was not haunted. It was just a donkey, a dog, a cat, and a rooster that stayed in that house that suited them very, very, very well. They had space, a roof upon their heads, and lots of food to eat. And from time to time, you could hear a very familiar song sung in the woods. Trumpet, 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 ta, ta, loo, hee, 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 hello, hello, hee, om-pa, lom-pa, om-pa, lom-pa, om-pa, lom-pa, loo. The end. So, that's my story. What do you think, Michael?
I thought it was very nice. Thank you so much.
You know, I have to say I've never done this before. This is my first time doing this story with silks and glass, and I think it went pretty well.
I think it's very important for people to not get scared because I don't have puppies, I don't have this, I don't have that. But you always have things on your home that you can use for storytelling. And
well, did you guys like the story? I hope you did, because as Michael said, you can really use anything, right? I've done it with puppets before, but it's a lot of work because if I'm doing it by myself, I have 4 animals here that I have to work with, and it's not easy. When I'm doing it in the classroom, I also ask the children to help me. I also find it very helpful to have a music in the story, so that's why I put this music in there, and it doesn't have lyrics, so you can think that the animals could easily sing that song, and it has a movement to it too, so the children can sing along and they learn the song and they do the movements too. So I always like to tell a story with songs and with movement because I think that also enriches the story. So if you're doing a story for your children, I encourage you to use music. And I don't know, even as simple as you telling them a story about Little Red Riding Hood. And Little Red Riding Hood, when she's going through the woods, she's collecting flowers and she's picking flowers for her grandmother. And you can put a song in there, like, how's that song go? Look in the garden bed, something beautiful is growing, bright shaped like a cup all red, 2 lips opens to the sun. And it can be songs that you know, and can be songs from your childhood. But I think the kids really love music and they really appreciate that. So that's one thing that I do. Every time I tell a story that I'm gonna tell many times to the children, I think about a song, I think about a moment that I can put the song in. I like moving, and I also like doing the voices. I think the voices are also very important. So if you have Little Red Riding Hood with a little child voice, you have the wolf who is scary and sneaky, and you have grandmother who has a different voice, and it play with that too. And then you have the strong and fierce hunter, and play with that as well. I think that is also fun to play with the different voices. Now you probably think, oh, Gleice is a teacher, right? And she does this every day. And it's just natural, and it comes natural to her. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't come, a little bit, because I've been doing this for a while. But one thing that I would tell you is do read your story a few times before you're gonna create something like that. Do know your story, and not like all the stories down to the details, but it is important to know the beginning, the middle, and the ending of the story, and know picture. Is it in the woods? Is it in the beach? Is it in the water? Is it up in the air? Wherever your story is based, just picture those images. Our children, they really feed on our own images. So it's important that we have a very strong imagination. So before I tell stories, I read the stories and I close my eyes and I really imagine the stories and how the story goes. And I think that helps. It has helped me a lot.
And it also helps for you to be secure enough to tell the story without having to go back to the paper or with saying things twice or 3 times because you're insecure, right? And that creates the mood. It's going to be easier for your child to embark on the story if you are there present with them instead of...
Yeah, you see, we don't really, unless I'm reading a book, right? That's different. But even when I'm reading a book for them, we do a lot of stories and we do a lot of book reading. And even when I'm reading a book, I read the book before. So if somebody comes and takes the book away, I'm still able to tell the story even if the book is not there, because that happens all the time. You get distracted all the time or interrupted. So I usually know the story, and even if the book's taken away or a child puts his hand on the book and I can no longer read, I know the story. And once I've done it once, I will ask for their help. And then I can give them the story so they can do the story too. So I've done this puppet show once where the children were the one doing it, and they presented to the coworkers, and it was so much fun because you can do that too. They can, you can, I always tell them first the story, then they can join in, and then they can do it for me or they can do it for others, and that becomes really fun.
So it doesn't mean that you have to do a story once and then they saw it, so move on to another story. You can repeat that.
Oh my God, no! This story we've been doing it since 1st grade, and it doesn't become old. I have one of my students, Nina. She loves the song, loves, and they do. They really enjoy the story. So it's one story, and I do it again and again and again, because the beauty is in the repetition and also knowing what's coming. And they learn the nuances of the story and they live with the stories, and that's important for them. This is what brings them nourishment. So one of the main healing and nourishing parts of the story is that it's being told again and again and again. And of course, except in main lesson, all the stories and the books we read, we have a book for a whole week, or we have a book for 3 weeks. If I'm doing a puppet show, I will do it 3-4 times. Once a week, and then I'll bring it back, because it does not get old. It's what they want to hear, and the most it's familiar to them, so they enjoy it. So another thing that we do in the class, we use old socks too, and it's really fun. So this puppet show, for example, you can really do with socks. One of my students, Braden, he loves sock puppet, and you don't need faces, ears, and all of that. You really can tell them, use your imagination. And if you do know the story well, you can play with that too. So you can really play with socks and tell a whole story about the donkey and about the dog. Donkey, dog, just use socks. This is also fun. Another thing that you can do too is to use those same glasses and put faces on it. You can take a glass in there. Yeah, Michael, great.
I'm clumsy.
Yeah.
That's kind of well known here in the Camphill school.
Yeah, so you can use this one.
I can use this one.
So you can just, take a glass, or you can take a paper cup, or you can take, those markers are really good. You see, very good.
They're for dry eraser.
So you can make funny faces and create a story with the children in the kitchen. About a naughty boy who did not ever wanted to clean up. Never, ever, ever. Never wanted to clean up. Well, one day his mother told him, "You have no choice today. I'm gonna give you a big, big shower." Then naughty boy tried to run as fast as he could, but no matter how fast he tried, his mother was very close behind him. "Well," she said to him, "I'm gonna give you a shower that you would never forget." And then she put him upside down in a dishwasher. And then you can do dishes with the children and talk about a story. So you can literally tell a story anywhere. Your children can start a story when they point to a bird that they see up in a tree, and you can create a story about. So they're hiking, that can be a little bit boring sometimes because you've done it so many times, can become a nice fun story between you and them. And yeah, we do that all the time. We tell stories to each other when we're hiking, and mostly starts with them. They point at something, or they say something, or they see a beautiful flower, and then a whole story can develop from it. Another thing that you can do to be very secure is to do a story around your own life story, your biography, right? So I was telling Michael the story just before. I told him, so once there was a little girl. She lived in this beautiful kingdom. But the king was not very nice. He was very mean to his people. The little girl's parents worked in the kingdom, and they worked really hard. The kingdom produced many things, but the most special thing was the amazing honey, the sweetest honey in the whole place. It came from the most beautiful bees. And that story, it's about me, who grew up in a sugarcane plantation where my parents had a very hard life, and there was an owner of the land. He owned the land, he owned the houses, and my parents worked for them in a very funny relationship between the landlord and the people who were working. So you see, it's my story, but I can just transform it. So you can also tell your story to the children, and they won't know what it is. But it's your story, so you can actually really build on it and tell your children your story. That's what my grandfather used to do. I found out that a lot of the stories, not the ghost stories, but a lot of the stories that he told us were his own life stories and his adventures. He would just transform it, and we loved it.
It's a really nice way to connect, to create a relationship with, not only with your children, but with whoever you're telling a story to.
It's a very bonding experience. Yeah. It's also your voice. So my children and I are very connected, and I'm sorry, the parents of my children, that I call them my children all the time, but it's a very special way of connecting because they love you and they trust you. And they become alive in the stories that you tell them. And if it's your biography, it's your life story, it's even more special. But if it's also a story that you like and you feel connected to it, they will feel it too. So it is a very special way of bonding. When I'm telling the story, they are all sitting cozy and listening to it. It's always magical to tell them stories.
And it's important to create the right environment as well, right? You don't want to tell a story with the TV running on the one side and the phone ringing on the other side. It's important to create that cozy space.
Yeah, it is. There are different ways to do it, right? You can use silks, you can use socks, and you can use anything you want, materials. You can just tell a story without anything. It's important that if you have, like if a child is having a difficult time, well, you can use a calming story. You can hum a song that has a story, or you can even hum a story for them. Can really be used in any situation. I think if you're gonna do a proper story like this, it is important that they are cozy, that they feel comfortable, that they're waiting, that the light, you have to work with the lights too, so not too bright like this one, like just facing me, but that the lights are dimmed. And if you're doing it at night, which I think is a very special moment, it's a heart moment, right? When you're very close and they're just about to go to bed. And you also dim the lights. You can even have a candle if that is allowed, and create that mood and really be close together and read a book and know the story. And if you can expand the story and tell the same story 2 or 3 weeks, like really tell the same story. For most children, even if they say it's boring, they're still gonna sit and listen to it. And I think nighttime it's very special. But you can also use stories anytime. If you want children to have fun, or if you want children to work and do a chore, just create a story as you go. When
you mentioned the nighttime, that ties with one of the questions that we received here. Uh, are there any specific aspects that you look for in a story? Any structure, moral, songs, characters, and I might be stepping in too much, but it's also the quality of what you want to get from the story, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing a nighttime story, you're going to look for a story that.
Yeah, if you're doing, I mean, it depends. If you have teenagers, you can have a chapter book, right? And have a story about Norse mythology. You can have a story about Greeks and gods and all of that, because they like the adventure and the actions in it. If you have teenagers, if you have little children, fairy tales are always a good option. I think the important thing is that you read and that you connect to it, because that's the main thing that happens here. I connect to the story and I connect to my children through the story. So it's important that you know the story, that you yourself connect. So either if you like, Little Red Riding Hood, for example, was your favorite story as a child, then read that story first. And then learn through reading a story that you already connect with, and then you can grow on it, and then you can develop. I wouldn't recommend, for example, if you're telling a night story, to have any movement. You can have a soothing song to it, but not any movement, because what you want is them to let go of the day and go into the sleeping space. So if you are with teenagers, yes, you can do chapter story and actions and all of that. Nothing that is like too dark. So then again, I would recommend you have to read the story before. But for younger children, but everybody also enjoys fairy tale. I still read fairy tales and I enjoy them too. But it's important that you yourself connect to the story. And they will connect with you through it. And what was it?
I think that was good. Ugo was asking about like specific aspects of that you look for in a story. And like here in Woodledge, we usually did story time in the evening after 7, right before the evening circle, and most of the stories were about going through this night period and letting go and being relaxed, and in specific moments that we knew that the girls were getting a little bit antsy about going home, or they were having homesick. We tell stories about moms that were working far away and would take care of their children from afar, and I think it's important, like as I said, to connect to the child and also see what it can be helpful for them. And I think that goes a little bit into curative education stories that we do here, right?
Yeah. I think curative story, I think that's a bit earlier. I think if you just want to do stories to put your children to bed or to entertain them, I think that's a very different realm. And I think what you're trying to do is to have them at peace, right? And have a good moment together, a loving moment together before they go to bed. And I think if you connect to the story, for me, that's the first step, especially if you haven't done it. Or choose a nice book with very soothing, colorful images that are, doesn't have any dark images to it. But I think to think about curative and what kind of story to read for what, that's a very different step. Not disencouraging any of it. But if you're beginning with it, I think relationship really goes a long way. And you do find images that you like, oh, this would be nice for them to hear. But I think
it's not essential.
I think relationship, it's essential, because if you're able through story to soothe your child in the night and they have a very good night of sleep, which I think stories do that. I myself read fantasy before bed, and it really puts you in the right space to sleep and then hopefully wake up energized in a good way, that you're full of energy, but full of energy to do the tasks and to be kind and good to one another. And I think curative stories is a whole different level. I think,
Well, Emmett is watching and he's enjoying a lot.
Oh, good. Hi, Emmett.
And I got a message. Gleice, please create a small story about girlfriends who meet at school and become best friends forever.
Oh.
You're beautiful. Beautiful job of yours. Love from Brazil. From Camila.
Oh. I told my friends that I would be live. Bye, Camila.
I think it's fascinating what you do and how you do it. It's really impressive, and
I think I see it. I see it in my children every day. Like when it's story time, it's amazing to create. I have 8 children, and it is amazing to see what it does. And I think not only for children, I think for adults too. I think we also enjoy story. We also enjoy reading stories and imagining also what it is in these images that are also healing, and that it's magical and you travel. So I'm fascinated by, and because I see what it does to them, I use it a lot because it really bonds us as a group. And it's really special to see. It's like no matter what you're struggling with, you are open to stories if I'm open to the stories. And I am the person, I am the main person. I just did this story recently, and one of my students said, well, I've heard the story too many times and I'm bored. And I said, well, it's all right, you can go to the playground. Well, he didn't. And he was just paying attention as everybody else was. So even if they tell you I'm bored and I don't want to hear again, try once more. You see that and also the more you do it, the more you're gonna become confident with. Because I started really telling stories when I came to Camphill. And this was like every time I used a little bit, or I saw people doing it, and I would see how the students would react to it. I was like, whoa, there's something really magical in this. And it's hard to really remember how I reacted to it when I heard stories in my childhood. But seeing the children listening to it was inspirational. And of course, I also started in 1st grade. So that's when you tell stories every day. Every day you tell a story in 1st grade, and that builds up. So yeah, and it was just by seeing what it does to the children and what it does to us too. I mean, I enjoy puppet show as much as my children do. I wish I could watch more, but I have to do it. But yes, we also very lucky too. We have a great amount of resources here. We have people who tell stories, and we have puppets, and I know your parents constantly say this, right? It is very hard at home to create the space, to create the environment. You gotta be courageous because it's not easy.
And well, you said about like telling a story a lot of times, but that means as well that you can choose a story and just work through that story with a child, right? You tell the story a couple of times, and then maybe you do some drawing based on that story and some crafts, and maybe you can create a puppet with your child. And
you can do a sequence of paintings as well, a sequence of drawings. You can also encourage your child to create things to you to present to their siblings, for example, or to the dad, and it can become your thing. Like either, the mom and your child, you create these things together, and then you present and you perform and you put on a show in the evening, because that's also what we do too. We put on a show, and then we present to like the coworkers who are waiting outside and don't know anything that's happening inside. And they also really enjoy that, this whole element. And if you can't speak, I mean, I will be your voice, and you're gonna manage the glasses, and you're gonna manage the silks, and you're gonna manage the socks. There is always a way that they can contribute, or they can hold the pictures while you're telling the story. There are so many ways to do this.
So a story doesn't need to be the beginning and the end of that. It can be actually just the starting point of a whole program.
A whole bonding experience, because I think that is also very special. The children feel like when they work in these things, so they feel very proud. And if you put on a show, like do a puppet show at home, like with whatever you can, they are always very proud with that. Yeah, it's fun. You can really use your imagination and be creative and let them do things too and see what they come up with as well. It's nice to do it together.
Talking about age groups, we have children here that go from 2.5 up to 21 years old. Different age groups would relate different to different stories, but is there any a specific age that you should start, or should in specific age you should stop, or?
I mean, you see, with our children, it's very interesting, right? You might have a 21-year-old in your house that will enjoy something like that. And you might have a 7-year-old that does not. So that's not that thing. So you have to find out what it is that would spark their interest. You know your children better than I do, most of you. But so to do puppet show with, like, for example, with the older ones, you can work in like sections, right? You can create a puppet show with them and tell the story, but you're not doing the puppet show for them, right? So you can use them to, for example, create a show for filming to show their grandparents, for example. So they get engaged in the production of the puppet show, and then they present to their grandparents or to the dogs and cats or to their siblings. They are listening to the story, they are creating the story with you, they are busy engaging in a painting, in a drawing, but you're not having them sitting down listening to a story. I think bedtime, anybody can have a story. Again, teenagers, I wouldn't use so much fairy tales unless they are very into it. But I think if for teenagers, they could actually participate in the creation of it. And that could be really fun for them to say, okay, let's put a puppet show together. And then we're going to film it, and then we're going to send it to your grandparents. Or we're not going to tell your dad, and then we're going to do it, and then we're going to present to your dad. And then they create, and then they're listening to the story, and they are getting the nourishment that these stories can give. And they are bonding with you, and they are probably engaged in a way that is not destructive or disruptive, and getting the substance of the story. And for the younger ones, you can actually tell them the story first, and then see if it's the right thing for them is to create a story, right? You always need to see, because some of them might not like it. Some of them might just want to hear the story, and then you're going to push them into do a drawing or push them into do a puppet show, and that's not their thing. So you have to see what is the best for your child.
And what about reading books? How that goes into the storytelling?
I think reading books, again, goes back to what were your favorite books when you were a child, if you still have access to it. It is important that you really go through the book before. Like, if you go to the library, or if you look on lists, websites where you can buy books. There are websites that you can turn the pages a little bit just to see a little bit what the story is. And I would say always read the book before. And it's hard because some children can sustain like a longer book, and some children don't. It has to be a short book. I would say if you're reading a book, try to be short and try to read the ending of the story if they're younger. If they are older, they can handle cliffhangers, and they can handle not ending the story today. But if they're younger, I would say don't do much cliffhangers. Don't let, unless they really can't have the story anymore and they don't want to listen to it anymore. But try to do short stories that you can actually end in one single go and not stop here and then we'll have a little bit later. This is before bed.
Yeah, Hearing Wood Ledge, we have our favorite book. Like, we have girls from 9 to 12. Their favorite book is one that's called 5-Minute Bedtime Stories, and there's literally takes 5 minutes each story, and it's very for that group age and works. In Longhouse, where I was last year, we had 16, 17, and 18, and we were reading. Well, we read the Chronicles of Narnia, and we read one chapter per day, and we had The Secret Garden, and we also read one chapter per day, and they could follow. So it does depend on the age.
On the age of the children. And I think you also, and again, I'm saying this again, I think this is very important. It is important that the reader connects to the story. Because for our children, that capacity to create pictures and images is not as strong. And I think if you read a story that you don't like it, do not read it for them. Do not. I think You have to enjoy, and then do have options. If you have 5 or 6 books and you want to read book before bedtime, ask them to choose, knowing that you have scanned them already, knowing that you put them in the toilet and read it while you're in the toilet. If you're busy all the time and you're saying, I don't have time to read these books, get short books and just scan them through it and give them an option, but do read them before.
And the length of the story, it doesn't matter the time, or it matters more the time that you're telling the story, how long it should be, or matters more the attention span of the child?
Yeah, well, the attention span, right? I mean, some of our children, they are just very peaceful children, and you can read for them like for 15 minutes. And some of them would take a 2-3 minute story. And some of them would take a game like this for like 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Some of them will really engage in a game like this for a long time. It's really depending on your child and on their attention span. And this you're also going to have to build up too, right? You're going to have to build up your own confidence in reading stories and knowing the story and engaging your child and learning when is the time for them, like when are they ready for a story, when is a good time for the story. You're gonna, like, I know my class well, I know when it's time to tell a story, and I know even if I had schedule a story, I know when they're not ready, and I'm not gonna do a story because I know that this is not what they need right now. So you have to know, and of course you as a parent, you know your child better. But you will, the more you do, the more confident you get in reading the situation and know when it's a time to do it and when is a time not to do it, when is a time to stop, or when the story is not working, right? Sometimes you do like the story, but guess what? Your child doesn't, and sometimes you have to respect that and maybe choose another one.
So it's kind of like there's no set of rules. There's what you know from your child and how that relationship is being built.
It's a relationship, I think. And that's the beauty of it. Like, I have a relationship with my class as a whole, right? My class, my 8 students, they are one being that I relate to on a daily basis. And you have your family too in the same way, right? Your child and the siblings and your husband, and it's a family that works as a unity. And relationship is the foundation for that, for storytelling. And yes, I can come to a crowd and tell a story. Guess what? I do it here in Beverona. Everybody knows me, and that works. Like, I can stand in front of everybody in the assembly and tell a story. This is the people I know. This is the people that I love and that I work with every day, like you guys, right? And I can tell you a story. I'm a little bit hot here, right? That doesn't take away that I get nervous as well. And I still get nervous in front of my kids sometimes as well, right? Because I do want what is best for them. But there is no rules. That's the thing. You're gonna have to figure out yourself. As hard as it sounds, it's also exciting. It's exciting to try, okay, what is the story that it's gonna be, that is actually gonna work? How are we gonna create things? And don't be stuck in silks and glasses and socks, right? You have different stuff at home. Branches in the woods work. Like my kids, we would make puppets with just branches in the woods, and you create a whole story from it.
I have very good memories of stories being told through drawing. That's how kind of I grew up with stories, like there would be like a board or like a paper and someone would just draw and tell a story when drawing. That was always very special to me as well. So you can be as creative as you
want. Yeah, as creative, and knowing their limitations too, right? You also don't want people getting frustrated because they can't do this or they can't do that. And that's why, again, I say, you know your children and you know what they can do. So don't push them to do something just because I did and just because I said it's a good idea. You really have to just read them and see. I think bedtime story, it's not rocket science. I think that is a little bit different. If you're going to put a puppet show, it does take a little bit more creativity from you and your child, but it will come. Because I truly believe we all are imbued with creativity. We just have to have the courage to do it. And I think bedtime story, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful to do. You're really creating a very nice mood for your child to go to sleep. And that I recommend 100%.
Well, I think that's kind of all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Gleice. Have any last words so we can close the subject?
Hang in there. You guys are doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and I have you all in my heart. And if you need anything, just write to us and shout out, and we'll do whatever we can to support you guys. Bye.
Yeah.
That's it.
If you're watching this video and it's not live and you do have questions, just put on the comments and I will make sure that Gleice receives them and we reply to all the comments and all the questions. If you do have any suggestions for any future lives, please send us a comment, send us a message, and stay safe. See you guys soon.
Bye my children, if you're watching me, I miss you guys. I miss them.
Yeah.
A lot.